Thank you very much, Laura Jane. Hi, everyone. We're going to be discussing a very important topic when it comes to not only launching your startup, but having it scaling up. Every company in every field is now facing the challenge of everlasting permanent transformation, but it's even more demanding for startups because you've got to cope at the same time with this transformation and with the challenges, the many challenges of hypergrowth, of structuring your company and at the same time developing your offer. How do you cope with it? That's what we're going to be discussing with our three guests, who are some, may I say, some poster childs when it comes to building up, because you're managing companies, very high-profile companies, unicorns, or companies who are going to be unicorns in a very short time from now. In your experience, how do you cope with it? Maybe could you remind us the main challenges you had to face when it comes to building up and in management, from a management point of view, in maybe the last 2 years? Who wants to on? Roelant, what were the main challenges you had to face?
I think the main challenge...
Maybe speak closer to the mic,
the main challenge in general is to keep speed. For a fast-growing company like us, speed and maintaining speed is critical. And as your company grows, with the number of people you grow towards, we're now 1,000 people all over the world, you really want to make sure that you don't become a bureaucratic organization or where you have many layers that people are dependent on. So the challenge is speed.
Oh. And when it comes to Reddit, what did you have to face, Katelin? Because obviously you've been building up at a very fast pace. What were the main roadblocks or the most critical points?
So I started at Reddit 3.5 years ago. We were 75 employees. We're now about 500. And so in addition to speed and ensuring that you are keeping up with the pace of your demands of your users, it really is about how you're growing and scaling your culture. So thinking about the talent that you're inviting in, thinking about how you are actually going to do business. So you have your values, you have your business and how you're producing, but it really is who you're inviting in and how you're choosing to do it.
Okay, who you're inviting. Is it the same for you, Philippe? MANOMANO has been scaling up at a very fast pace as well. Your own challenges, what were they?
Yes, indeed. We've grown from 40 people to 400 in the last 3 years. So yes, challenges, just like you guys. I would say two things, really. First one is anticipating the growth from a business standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, from a cultural standpoint. And probably the second thing is communicating internally, because when you've got the big picture, it's easy to understand why the company changes. But when you don't have the big picture, which is in the case of everyone, it's hard. So you need to communicate really well and repeat all the time.
You need to share your vision, as the speakers in the former panel just told us. But this vision, this project is always evolving. How do you communicate it? How did you do so?
Communication, I think it's a 3 steps communication. Communication with individuals, that's when you choose them. So basically the hiring process is absolutely key in our view in checking that the people have got the right culture and that they want your culture. Second point is at the team level, and that goes through the managers. I think founders and CEOs of companies give a culture, but it trickles down, and the backbone of the culture is held by the managers. So we've got to train the managers. And third step is at the company level. How do you, at the company level, communicate this culture? Through rituals, basically.
Rituals? Have you got rituals at Reddit as well, Katelin?
Absolutely. So I learned how to manage organizational culture while I was actually at Pixar, the animation studio. And so studying under the best storytellers on earth, we really learned about the value of internal storytelling, how you think about your past and your future in communication that is with individuals through your culture. So you think about the who and the how, if that's your culture, really how do you leverage that storytelling to ensure that your values are bleeding through your entire organization and then make their way into your product.
And how about rituals at ADYEN? Have you got some? Which ones?
Yeah, we have a lot of rituals. I mean, the thing is, we have about 18 offices across the world. So what continues to be a really big deal for us is to have everybody together. So we invest a lot of time to get people together, get them all to Amsterdam. But also we do an exchange program so that people can really, from every office, very easily spend a week or a month in another office. The only thing you need to do is tell us what are you going to do there? Why do you think it's a good idea? And what are you going to bring back? If that makes sense, we make it happen.
When it comes to company culture, it often comes down to a few essential points, a few core values, as Lara Jane was putting it a little bit earlier. What are your core values, and how did they evolve from the starting point? Roelant.
Yeah, that's a good question. I knew we were talking about this, so I brought it along.
You've got a list? You've got a short list?
No.
You've got a black book about core values?
I memorized this, but I have a few of these. If you're interested to learn a bit about it, I can hand them out later. These core values at ADYEN, we call it the ADYEN Formula.
Yeah.
So from our point of view, are they core values? It's actually the formula how we do things.
We can't wait to know the formula, so share it with us.
Yeah, no, I will share it with you. I mean, we're by origin a Dutch company, we talked a bit about. So one of the things that says here is we talk straight without being rude. This enables...
That's very Dutch, my dear.
we are, yeah, but we make very clear, this is the international organization, without being rude. We are direct, but it means, if we clarify, it's not rude, it's efficient, it's for speed. The other thing is, winning is more important than ego, work as a team across cultures and time zones. And this is very key to ADYEN. We hire people, and that's ultimately where it all starts, I think. We hire people that are very competitive and driven, but not with a big ego. Because everything we do together. There's not one single project that one person has done.
It's a very complicated, it's a very critical point, because having people with powerful minds, but not too big of an ego, it's a very fine balance. Maybe you made mistakes in analyzing it. Yeah. How do you cope with it?
You let them go, soon.
Fast.
Fast, yeah. I mean, that's the best for everyone, because ultimately having people that have a big ego in your organization, it has a massive effect on the rest of the organization. Everybody's going to be like, hey, we didn't have big egos here, and what's this guy doing? Why do we tolerate him?
No prima donnas.
No.
No. And how about the core values of Reddit? Have you gone to your own blacklist,
No.
Katelin?
I wish that we did. I love this idea. That's beautiful. A way of sharing immediately when people come to your organization, when people are engaging with you. I love that. It would be very expensive, though, if I were to do that, and not because it's expensive to make a card, but because our number one value is actually evolve, meaning even our values change over time. And for us, because of the stage of business we are, they're actually changing pretty frequently. So evolve is the one value that has stayed in my 3.5 tenure, and the second one is actually remember the human. So this is the notion that as we are sitting behind our computers and we're engaging with our users, and hopefully our users are engaging with other users, we actually remember that there's a human attached to that. It's really easy to forget on the internet that we are engaging with humans. So.
And for MANOMANO, what's the point? Have you got your core values? Have you got your own list as well?
Yes, but our list is very short. When we decided we would have values at MANOMANO, other things in other ways than on the wall, we thought we would keep it very short because we wanted to be a very strong screening process at the recruitment level. And so as a result, we only said 3 things: boldness, ingenuity, and care. And we made it a very tough selection process based on those 3 values at the beginning. And then, of course, we drive them throughout the company with what we call MANO values ambassadors of each one of those 3 values.
But how do you cope with these core values and with the transformation at the same time? You've been growing very fast. You keep on growing very fast. How do you keep those core values? How do you keep the DNA of the company and at the same time evolving very fast? How do you cope? How do you balance it? Katelin.
Well, again, it is living these values through storytelling. So ensuring that every single employee knows what these actually mean. It's one thing to put them on a wall or on a card, but people actually have to use the language. So it's about identifying the behaviors. And so we have awards at Reddit where they are the value awards, and they are peer-to-peer assigned. This is not coming down from the top saying, hey, this is what the CEO or the founder believes in, but this is, hey, when we worked on that project, so-and-so did X, and I thought that they were really living the value of remember the human. Therefore, I want to make this award. So identifying the behaviors, demonstrating them, and then actually talking about them at the company level frequently.
And for you, Philippe, what does remain of MANOMANO DNA now that you're becoming a unicorn, as I was telling you a little bit earlier? How do you balance it, evolution and intangibility?
I think in culture that there is a bit of both. Part of it needs to evolve, and it evolves over time. And I'll give you a very quick example. At the beginning of the company, when there were 30 of us, we thought culture was something that meant that we always needed to be all of us together in the same place, everyone sitting in the same office. With growth, we now believe remote is a good thing and we can live in several offices. So culture evolves. At the same time, culture stays very, very specific, and strong beliefs need to remain. And the way we do it, for example, is by having peer groups with the managers.
And for you, Roelant, how did you keep some pieces of the company's DNA, and when you've been growing so fast and even launching an IPO, so going public? How do you keep the DNA when you change that much?
As I said earlier, the people that's where it all starts. You really got to spend a lot of time on hiring people that fit that culture and spend an awful lot of time around it. So we spend lots of time with interviewing. Many people see new candidates. We always have a board member interview someone, everyone we hire. So we really spend an awful lot of time on it to make sure people fit. And if they don't, you have to act on that. I think that's a really critical component.
We've got people from the audience asking us to maybe get a little bit further in the how-to process. I've got that question. How do you educate your employers about company's value? Concretely, how do you do so? Roelant?
Well, for us, it's in this formula, and it starts the moment we interview people, we already start to talk about it. We talk about the formula because that's a way that we can show what's important to us as a company. And we ask people to give examples of how they show behavior that's in line with this formula. Then they start with us. They have a 2-week period in Amsterdam. We spend a lot of time explaining it because this is, of course, nothing if you don't know the stories behind it. So there's a lot of explaining and stories around why this is important, how we do it, and it comes back all the time.
Katelin, you're the VP in charge of people, of culture, so of course you're working on a day-to-day basis on it. Have you got a few best practices to share with us? How do you educate your people?
Definitely, I would agree. It starts with hiring. First and foremost, you're ensuring you're bringing the best talent that are aligned with your core values. Then you bring it to life through your rituals, right? Your celebrations, how you celebrate wins, how you address failure or mourn losses. And then you bring it to life in the social side. So it's not to be dismissed how much people need to feel like they belong somewhere. So giving them spaces where they can connect with one another and translate that into your product. And then, of course, in the departure. I think that many startups, many companies are petrified of attrition. But the reality is, in Silicon Valley, the average age of an employee is 18 months. Not the age, the tenure is only 18 months. And so you're constantly having this turn. So if you can think about learning and development and employing those people time and time again, you really can demonstrate your culture through that way.
And what the educational process in MANOMANO, Philippe?
Yes. At MANOMANO, one of the things we really believe in is that culture is the one thing that you remember of a company alongside with people 15 or 20 years after having worked there. So as a result, we try and make culture tangible. We try and make sure that people see and do the culture. So as a result, one of the things we do, for example, is we have people, as part of the onboarding process, build their own chair. Not the desk, but the chair, because it's building. And it's bring people in the doer culture of MANOMANO.
We've got another very interesting question from the audience. How transparent are you? What is the limit? Can you be with your employees? How transparent can you be with your employers on issues relating to equity? Cash crunch, fundraising, board fights? How do you... Oh, Philippe, I love that smile. You need to explain it.
I'm just looking at board fights and thinking, well, for the moment, we're very lucky.
There are board fights all over the place, you know.
Well, you've got board fights and board fights. So we're lucky we don't have those kind of board fights. But yes, no, fundraising, for example, we are a startup, and yes, we burn cash. And so, yes, fundraising is a key topic. We've always been very transparent with the employees, saying, guys, maybe if we don't manage to raise these funds this time around, we're all out of business in 6 months, in 9 months. We tend to say it because we don't think it helps by hiding things.
Katelin, a few advices for us?
Absolutely. So we believe in a very, very transparent culture, mostly because of the nature of our product. So Reddit is the most human place on the internet, truly, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we own that very, very wholeheartedly. So internally, for example, when we talk about cash or equity, we actually have a non-negotiation policy at Reddit, and so what we believe the role is worth is what we pay. No more, no less. And we actually have a very transparent process in how you progress through your career, including equity and cash, and that there is not a single person at Reddit who doesn't know where they fall in line.
And you told us ADYEN is a straight-talking company, and when it comes to transparency, how do you deal with it, Roelant?
On the compensation side, it's not super transparent that everybody knows from each other what they make.
It's even more difficult when you go public, obviously.
Yes. On everything else, we are very transparent, I would say. So around the strategy, the financials, what's going on in the company. From that point of view, it's very transparent, and people really appreciate that.
It's always a very critical point when you try and begin to work with VCs, and even more if you go public as you did. How do you cope? How do you mix the startup buddies culture with the VC agenda? It's always a critical point. How did you deal with it, Roelant?
The approach we've always taken is to try to be very predictable to our investors. So basically, when discussions started, we were always very clear. This is what the deal terms will be like. This is how we will inform you every month. And this is what the shareholder meetings look like. That's what you can expect. If you don't like it, let's stop the conversation. If you want more, then we continue. But these are the terms. And then in the end, that's always how we executed it. And for example, the way we communicated with them, we do a monthly flash report, just a 2-pager with key updates. We've done that for the past 12 years, never changed.
Katelin, how do you try and mix the corporate culture with the communication with the VCs?
Well, I would say that Reddit's in a more unique position. We actually were acquired a few years into the company's tenure by Condé Nast, and so we lived under their umbrella for about 8 years. And so I think that the more interesting thing is when we actually restarted the company 3.5 years ago when the two founders returned, so Steve Huffman and Alexis Ohanian, when they were invited to come back and try again. I think that was the more interesting part because we became our own independent company again. So we actually had gone through the process back and forth, and so that meant we got a new board. We had to readdress how we were dealing with new funding. So we've just taken on a new round of funding, and so how do we engage with the employees and how do we share, hey, we aren't actually Condé Nast anymore, we're our own thing. And so we have very open dialogue about that because of our history.
And Philippe, your way of finding that kind of balance?
Sure, I mean, I agree with both of you. You end up seeing that VCs usually definitely understand the importance of the company culture, and they understand that they should adapt to the company culture more than the other way around, that's for sure. At the same time, company culture for VCs, I think, is a very interesting part of the screening of a company because it gives you indication and signals as to how far the company can go and what speed it will scale at. So I think they pay a lot of attention to the company culture, and usually they don't try to disrupt it.
Obviously, we've got a very sharp audience who is asking us very sharp questions. I love that one. Tell us about the time where your values was challenged the hardest. Roelant?
I go back a bit in time because the team that we started this company with 12 years ago had worked together before in another company that got acquired. And that business got acquired by a large bank, and from that exercise we learned that you can very quickly destroy a culture in a company, and that led in that organization to all the great people leaving, and it really destroyed the whole thing. So we had those lessons learned, and that's also really been the reason that we have been independent since we started the ADYEN. And we're still independent as a company because we know that's the only way to really scale it and to make it a success.
Katelin, what was maybe your hardest time as a VP of People and Culture at Reddit?
It was actually when I started almost 4 years ago. The company that I was joining, Reddit, had 3 CEOs in less than a year. There was some very public, our users had kind of revolted against us. So we were in a really, really challenging place, and the culture was slowly imploding. And so what happened was they ended up bringing me on as the first actual people hire that they had brought on internally. Prior to that, everything had been outsourced. And so that was actually the first time, I would not say where our values were challenged or tested, but they actually didn't exist. So values exist whether you name them or not, because that's how we operate, and that's what the company actually values, how they operate. And so coming in and actually exploring what our values would be was the biggest challenge, was actually identifying what those were, and then maybe looking forward as to what we wanted them to be.
And for you, Philippe, a hard time?
I think it wasn't too long ago. We changed half of the IT team, because half of the team was external consultants, and we needed internal people, and we needed them yesterday. And so how do you recruit 60 people overnight in Paris? I don't know how you guys cope with this, but we find it very difficult. And so we had to be ingenious and caring at the same time. We were able to both treat correctly the third-party consultants that were with us and recruit overnight by opening new offices in other countries. And I think that was both bold and ingenious.
One more very fine how-to question. What do you do once you figure out that you hired someone who doesn't believe, who doesn't fit the motivation system, layout? How do you cope with it?
Yeah, we will always let them go.
Same thing?
Immediately.
Same thing?
Yes, but you try and do it by understanding what the person's talent is and where he actually belongs. Because he doesn't belong with you, you can still help him find out where does he belong, he or she.
We've got 2 questions, maybe we could mix them. How do you measure the satisfaction of your employees? How do you work with the data collected? And how, finally, do you make sure your culture is really inclusive in a day-to-day basis? Katelin, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually use a platform called Culture Amp, and it's a wonderful employee engagement survey, but it measures everything from a candidate experience all the way through exit. And so there are 5 core questions that actually lend to the engagement, and then the rest of the questions are all the X-ray of how I can get in and change those measures. It's an incredible platform, and also the board actually expects it of us now. So we have a slide every single board meeting that demonstrates our growth quarter over quarter.
Yeah, strong tools, strong practices, strong processes. Roelant?
So there's 2 things we do. A is there's a feedback loop from every team throughout the organization, and we will always use in any discussion this formula as a guiding discussion framework. But there's also, because we have so many people that travel across the teams, that there is also still big dependency on gut feel. You can really feel if you're visiting a team and talk to people how things are going, and we still feel that's also a really important check on where we are.
It sizzles in the air when you come to the companies.
Yeah.
Philippe?
Yep, we've got scorecards. We ask people to rate how they feel versus our values on a monthly, on a weekly basis, depending on the teams. And so basically we try and get a structured and data-driven figure on what people believe, how people believe the values are being lived in the company.
One of the part of growing as fast as you is becoming more and more international, becoming a global company, and it means hiring, working with new partners, people from different cultures, different parts of the world, having different teams, different facilities, working all together. How do you did you have problems? That's a question that comes to us through Slido. Did you have problems with misunderstanding your values by employees which are from a different part of the world, a different unit, maybe a company you bought out and who had some difficulties mixing with your company culture? I think you did have to deal with it. Roelant, how did you do so?
Yeah, absolutely. You will learn by doing. So I explained earlier, we talk straight without being rude in ADYEN, and so many years ago, for example, we were much smaller, but we opened up an office in São Paulo in Brazil, and it's a completely different culture in terms of less direct. But we were still...
In Brazil, it's a very specific culture.
Very specific, but
when
we
it
were
comes to
still
business.
very efficient. So at some point we let somebody go, and then we feel like, oh, it's really useful if you inform everybody that this person doesn't work here anymore. So what we did at that time, maybe 100 people in the company, email to list all, hi everyone, John is no longer working with the company. Any questions, let me know. And we think, oh, that's super efficient. Everybody knows what they're up to. But in Brazil, that mail comes in, they're like, wow, oh my God. People are chopped off their head here, like left and center, what's going on? So you really have to explain, and that's why we have this, explain why we work in a certain way and have stories behind it. And then they're like, ah, now I get it. And now they're fine with it.
Katelin, you're the person in charge of it when it comes to Reddit. How do you cope with it? Those intercultural matters.
Well, you know, we're actually still relatively young, even though we're a 14-year-old company. We have just only decided to start to expand our offices. So we just opened up our Dublin, Ireland office just a month ago. And so the first thing we did was we actually have a landing team.
But
so
your audience is so wide.
It's true. And I agree that your values are not just serving your employees, they're serving your customers as well. And this really, again, comes through storytelling. But as we think about opening new offices and as we communicate internally with our employees, we actually send a landing team to every new office that we open. And it's comprised of a core set of people who live our values, people who have been with the company for a significant period of time, and somebody that's new, to make sure that we go and we say, these are our core values, but we want to immerse ourselves in the community in which we are opening. And so, you know, for example, our Chicago office operates much differently than our Santa Monica office, but with that bedrock of values.
Philippe, I suppose it's a critical point of your agenda because MANOMANO started as a French platform, and now your goal is the whole Europe. So you're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. How do you cope with it?
Yes, now we have 13 different nationalities at MANOMANO, and I must say it's almost 13 different cultures. And yes, you definitely have country-led biases in the way people live the culture. But speaking of misunderstanding, I think you can even have misunderstandings from people who speak the same language. Because the word care, for example, as a value, can be totally misunderstood. And some people think it's very washy-washy, other people think it's comfort, other people think it's being able to play in the office. Caring is not that. Caring, for us at least, is being very, very attentive at the way people grow and caring for the way people grow. So just an example to show that it's not necessarily about countries, it's about explaining and communicating on your values, which for us is very important.
We're reaching the end of this panel, but as I told at the very beginning, you're role models when it comes to scaling up, when it comes to becoming unicorns. So what are your next projects? Have a dream. What are you working at? Roelant.
We have. It so feels for us as ADYEN like this has just started. We are at. We can go for years and years to come, and we're just loving the whole idea of building this huge company in the next 10 years, and that keeps us busy day to day. So yeah.
Philippe.
We're recruiting another 200 people, including another 150 devs.
200 people that year?
In the next 12 months.
In the 12 months.
Okay. 150 devs.
That's going to be building up as well.
So the key question for us is, I mean, organization is a way of showing your values and your culture. So how do we transform our organization internally so that it reflects our And that's a key question for us.
And when it comes to Reddit, what is your next big thing?
The next big thing, growth, growth, growth. We have been a company for almost 15 years, but really we've only just restarted ourselves. So we believe that we are a startup within a larger tech economy.
You still consider yourself as a startup?
Oh, very much. We are.
Because for people, you're a unicorn and a big one, even.
Yeah, we are babies. We have so much to learn. There's so much more value to bring, and we're really excited to do it.
So keeping the startup spirit. Thank you very much, guys. A big round of applause for our speakers. We're going to be leaving.